Welcome, everybody. We are live on YouTube to talk about the Astell&Kern Ultima SP3000 DAP. That's a digital audio player, the new flagship model from Astell&Kern that was just released last night for $3,699. We got the first review up on ecoustics.com that we hope you'll check out after you watch the video or before or whatever order you choose. But we want to add some context to that review. And William wrote a fabulous review on this product. And welcome, William Jennings, Senior Headphone Editor of ecoustics.com.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. No, thanks for your review. And I know you've been checking out this product and you had it for a couple of weeks, but you don't have it right now. It had to get sent on to some other reviewers. But we thought we'd touch on,
Actually, the one we had will be at Can Jam this weekend.
Okay, so
back to go to Can Jam. So yeah, we had it for a little while there, but they wanted to share it with more people, so it's off to Can Jam.
All right, so the exact unit that William has reviewed will be at Can Jam SoCal. I think it's at the Irvine Marriott, if I'm not mistaken. I should be there, so maybe I might see you there. But yeah, so William, what were some of the highlights? I know this is a flagship product. I think it's got some of the best technology in it. We've already talked about if you were even wondering why you should even consider a DAP to begin with, we have done a separate video on that, which we can link to. And it'll give you all the reasons why. So we don't have to give you any reason why you might need a DAP. This is kind of the ultimate portable listening experience.
Oh, and I think you hit the nail on the head with that. Particularly this model is the ultimate portable listening experience, or right up there at the top of the food chain. Very, very capable unit, capable of replacing a lot of desktop systems. So when you have that decision to make of, do I want a portable, do I want a desktop? In times past, portables were not really capable of producing the kind of audio quality that we saw in a desktop. Now they are. This thing does everything most desktop systems do in a box the size of a smartphone. So technology wise, I think that says a lot about what you're looking at. Is you literally take, what was a rack of components and you miniaturize it to the point where you can carry it in a package the size of a smartphone. And then on top of that, when we get to looking at this thing, they've made it a piece of artwork. The A&K design language has always been, pretty spectacular in that it was always something where it looked more art than industrial. And with this one, not only is the design language there, but they've gone to a 904L stainless, which I know a lot of people don't care about stainless steel and what it is. But in this case, it is special. You have to understand that this is what's known as a watchmaker's steel, in that it is extremely high precision and it takes an extremely high polish. Excuse me.
Okay, this happens when you're live.
Yep. Takes an extremely high polish, excuse me. And the nice thing about that is that with the bulk of the material being chrome and nickel rather than being iron, once it takes that polish, it tends to keep it very, very well. So you see it in things like the Rolex watches, you see it in, bespoke products in the luxury market. We haven't seen it show up in a DAP until now. So from a looks perspective, this is the first time we've seen 904L filter down into the DAP market. And part of the reason for that is the stuff is incredibly hard to work with. The machining time and the process to get that polish on it is something that, quite frankly, probably wasn't realistic when you're talking about products a whole lot below this price range. That simply, couldn't absorb the cost in a product at a $1,500 mark. So now that we're seeing them advance into the $3,000 and $4,000 price range, some of those things become realistic within that budget.
So the industrial design of it is kind of over the top.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. This is the Astell&Kern dog and pony show of let's show off everything we can do technology wise in one box. And on the outside, it's the 904 steel. It's a 1/2 inch bigger screen than the previous one at a higher resolution, so you're getting a better picture. They've done the things they needed to do to keep pace with the market and to keep a step ahead in a lot of cases. But the bigger change is on the inside. And what's funny is if you do a cursory read through the spec sheet, you can actually miss it, because the SP3000 was based on an AKM 4499 series DAC chip. Well, the SP3000 is also based on a 4499 series DAC chip. They're not the same chip. They're actually, when we look at what has gone on internally with this, it's fascinating in that, I read about this chip being released at High-End Munich back about the time we were going to the show in LA in June, and thought, oh, this is neat. It's going to be cool to see this in about 1.5 years, because it normally takes 1.5 years, 2 years for these announced products to trickle down into mainstream devices. Well, I didn't know that A&K was actually involved in the development of the chip, so obviously they were much faster to market than I anticipated, and this product uses that new chip that was announced at High-End Munich. And the real difference between it and everything else on the market right now is its ability to separate the analog and the digital sections of the system almost completely. And, to the point where the Snapdragon processor that's used is a system on a chip, and it's isolated behind silver shielding. You go to a 4191 sort of preprocessor, as it were, that handles the Delta Sigma operations and the filters. And there's one of those per channel. So again, channels completely separated, functions completely separated. And then those two hand off to each of the 4499EX series DAC chips, where the only thing we're asking it to do in this unit is do the digital analog conversion. It doesn't have to do the filters. It doesn't have to do the Delta Sigma process. All it's handling is that. So it's in complete isolation. And they've gone to 4 chips at that point because they've completely separated single-ended output and balanced outputs as well. Whereas a lot of other manufacturers will kind of go through and say, okay, well, we can combine the balanced outputs, to create a single end, and it saves us a couple of chips and it's cheaper and it's easier. It also brings in more noise. So this thing literally has, at every step along the path, they have gone out of their way to isolate anything that could introduce noise into the signal path. So, processor and graphics and all those things completely separated into its own module. The pre-processing and the filters, they're on their own chip. The actual, digital analog conversion, right. 4 chips handling that, 2 for single-ended, 2 for balance. Never the two shall meet. Again, complete separation of duties here. So it is essentially like looking at having a, dual mono system all the way through. And realistically, if you think about the fact that the single-ended and the balance are separate, it's like having a quad mono system. That if you look at the paths through it, there are 2 paths through the DAP for single-ended. There are 2 paths through it for balanced, and they're just electronically isolated from absolutely everything. So that was the big move for that. It was to try and change the game as far as the signal to noise ratio is concerned and up the ante.
Okay, so if I'm listening or hearing you right, it sounds like there's 2 dedicated DACs for each output, 2 per left and right channel for single-ended, 2 left and right channel for balanced.
Correct. There's a total of 6 chips involved. You've got 2 of the 4191 preprocessors. So those are left and right channel. Gotcha. Each of those feeds 2 of the 4499 DAC chips.
Okay.
So, if it's right channel, it's right channel for both single-ended and balanced, but it feeds in 2 separate DAC chips as it leaves that. And then you have the Teraton Alpha amplifier modules post the DAC chips. And again, all of them in parallel, no overlap between them, everything done to electronically isolate it as much as possible.
Okay, so you're getting almost three products in one. Is that a fair way of saying it, or
Oh, I think
it's
it's
the
more than that.
right?
Yeah, you're getting, from a standpoint purely of the pathways through, you're getting two. You're getting a single-ended product, you're getting a balanced product. They just happen to be in the same case.
Hmm.
When you start adding in how many products are involved in this, it can be used as a desktop DAC. It can be used as a source to feed other DACs. It can be used as an all-in-one. There are a lot of different use cases for it. So, it may be saying you're getting two products, depending on how you're looking at it, that may
Right.
actually be a low number.
Okay, and this particular DAC chip, it showed up in other products before, or is it the unique design of this one that makes it,
No, the
or it's never?
4490,
Yeah.
yeah, the 4499 series has showed up in things before.
Hmm.
The 4191, 4499 EX that are the models in this particular unit, to my knowledge, this is the first unit that's been released that has them. There are a couple others that have been talked about. I know there are a couple that are in the works. I think this is the first one that's actually been on the market available to consumers with this configuration.
I'm not sure if you.
I just lost your sound, Brian.
My mic muted.
There
Okay,
you are.
weird. Like my mic muted automatically. I don't know what happened. So got that
Sorry.
difficulties. And now I think you went it again.
No, I'm still here.
Okay, you're still here. Okay, so
I'm
let's.
here.
All right. Yeah, let's continue on. We're saying first time this particular DAC
Yeah,
has been used.
it's the
And
first release to the public, to my knowledge, and the really interesting thing about it is, we see a lot of these where they're capable of some pretty amazing numbers these days. We kind of think of 32-bit 768 kilohertz, as sort of the PCM limit. The chip itself is actually capable of 64-bit 1536 kilohertz. I got to looking, and honestly, the DAP is has a lower limit. It's still a 32,768 because some of the other things haven't caught up with the chip yet.
right.
But I got to looking just to see. I can't even find anything that will convert existing stuff to 64-bit to test with. So there's just, the thing is capable of things that nobody is doing. So it'll be interesting to see where the market goes with that and what happens with it. But yeah, the limit on what this thing is capable of is really pretty phenomenal as far as a bit rate, sample frequency, depth, things like that.
Right.
But the big thing for A&K, let me see if I can find it here in the slides real quickly, is this. We went from the SP3000, which was a market leader, at 125 dB signal to noise ratio. We started to see a few other models creep in. We've seen, KN came in with the N8 Model 2 at 125. Ibaso's 320s at 125. Fios M17's just a slightly, bit lower at 122. Shanling came real close with, with the 128 on the M7, actually bettered the 2000 by a little bit. But here we see the 3000 a full 5 dB better in signal to noise ratio. And we have to remember dB is logarithmic, so that's not a linear scale. So a 5 dB difference here is pretty monumental in looking at where they've moved that noise floor and how good the signal to noise ratio really is on this product. So that isolation that we were talking about, and I think this is the slide that references it in their deck, shows you the full path of how the circuitry is set up. And, at every level, everything is isolated where you don't have any chance for crosstalk, any chance for noise coming in from some outside source. So really the stated goal of this thing was to reset the bar on signal to noise ratio in a portable, and it looks like they've done it.
Yeah, just to pull back a little bit, this is, I think you said it in your best sounding DAP you've ever heard. Is that fair to say?
I think it's fair to say at this point. You know, I've heard some that were pretty fantastic. The 2000 was right up there at the top. You know, the K&N8s, the Shanling M7s. There have been some that were absolutely wonderful products. I think what you could do with those is, in some cases, you could pick out the faults of it. I did some of that during the review on the SP3000. It's a great DAP, hard to find fault with, but there are some there. And when you look at the 3000, anything that was arguably something that was not perfect in the 2000, I think they've done a very good job of addressing. So this is probably the most complete product that Astell&Kern has come out with to date, as far as addressing all of those issues and pushing the boundaries of what can be done with sound quality in a portable device. So yeah, I think it is safe to say that this is the best sounding DAP on the market today.
And you tested both the balanced and the single-ended. Can you spot the difference? Like if there was a blind test, would you be able to know what you were listening to?
No.
Like, or
no,
exactly the same.
Yeah. If your argument is, you know, if you plug in single-ended versus balanced, are you going to be able to hear a difference? Only in the respect that the balanced is more potent. If it's volume matched between the two circuits, no, you're not going to be able to tell a difference. If you simply were to move it over from one to the other and don't volume match it, yeah, the balanced is a more potent output, so you're going to notice that change. But no, there's not a distinct difference in sound signature between the two.
All right. And you had a couple of IEMs and different headphones that you tried them out with. And can you talk about some of your favorites from that?
Oh, sure. The absolute winner of the day was the Empire Ears Wraith. And I think it's really interesting to say that, in that if we look at the slide that's there, the other part of the announcement today was the Odyssey, which is a collaboration between Empire Ears and A&K. So lo and behold,
that's the small one in the picture right now.
Yeah, that's the ones sitting in the front there.
Right.
So it's interesting to see that, and that the Odyssey may be very similar, you know, to the Wraith in some respects. And I haven't had a chance to play with one yet, so I'm saying that based purely on who made it and the price range.
Right.
But it should be. I think the Odysseys were in the $3,500 price range too, so that puts it in the same general ballpark where the Wraith was. It's an absolutely spectacular listen. Just pulls out every detail you can think of. The soundstage is about as holographic as I've heard. You know, good three-dimensional, good headspace where it feels like everything's going on around you rather than sort of being confined right immediately to the space between your ears. Wonderful pairing. The other one that was right there at the top of the list with it is the Maze Empyrean and Maze Elites. Both of those were just wonderful pairings with the SP3000, and that, you know, it absolutely brings out everything that headphone is capable of. Right. And they're both very capable headphones. So when you say it gets absolutely everything that you can get out of one, that's asking a lot.
Right. Those are over-ear headphones. Typically you want a headphone amplifier, not a portable one, in the middle of it. But this is a portable headphone amplifier filling that space. Is that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. Anytime you get into a portable, you got a balancing act. You know, the more power you give it, the less battery life you're going to have.
Right.
SP3000 has about a 10-hour battery life, and it does have some limitations. If you start throwing 600 ohm high impedance, tough to drive headphones at it, you're probably going to see that number drop a little bit, things like that, where, you know, there are limits of what you can do, but it's more about how much battery you're willing to commit to that output power.
Right.
And as long as, you know, looking at the SP3000, I didn't have any problem running basically anything I wanted to on it. It's a little out of its ballpark with things that are, like I said, either real high impedance or real low sensitivity. You know, probably not what you're going to pair the HE6, you know, some of those things with. But within the normal day in, day out, yeah, it's great. It did a great job with just about everything. Didn't have any problem with the big planers, whether it be the Mezes, whether it be the Odysseys, whether it, you know, the Hi-Fi Man Arias, all of them did equally well.
All right.
And go ahead.
Yeah. No. Are there any headphones that kind of stood out as maybe not the greatest pairing? You've heard other, not to like bash any brands, but sometimes things don't match up well. But does this kind of pair up with everything?
Well, no, like I said, it does have its limits. I would avoid the stuff that's real high impedance or real low sensitivity. Like I said, the HE6s of the worlds, the things that are just incredibly hard to drive, this is probably not your best choice. In which case, you've got a line out mode, you plug it into another amplifier, and you go ahead and enjoy your headphones.
Right.
But in and of itself, it is designed to be portable, and we kind of have to think about it in that respect. That most people don't carry around the big planers, the things like that. So it's more geared to the kind of things that people are likely to travel with.
Let's maybe talk about it in the context of a desktop DAC replacement. Is that feasible? Or as to, like, yeah.
I think I think the biggest difference between what you're going to get out of an SP3000 and what you're going to get out of an equivalent spend. So if we went out, we said, okay, it's $3,700. We're going to go spend $3,700 on a desktop. The biggest change between the two, obviously the portability, but the SP3000 is going to have the limit of battery life. That when you go to a desktop unit, you give up on the portability, but you no longer have the concerns about battery life, things like that. The vast majority of your desktop units, you have to remember too, though, are going to turn around and require some other source. That when we have a desktop stack, either it's getting plugged into a laptop, some people are using phones, some people are using something like an SP3000 to actually, feed that desktop stack.
Right.
So when you consider it as a full picture and you're saying, okay, so I have to have a network player as part of that stack, because that's part of what I get with the SP3000 for that spend. One, your number of options drops like a brick. There just are not all that many, players in the desktop space, because everybody uses a laptop or a phone or whatever else and streams things. And two is that takes up a lot of your budget. That when you start looking at storage space and having a hard drive in it and things like that, that takes a big chunk of that $3,700 budget. So arguably, to find a complete system that does everything that the SP3000 does in the way of a desktop for the same spend, it's going to be fairly difficult to find things that compete with it on an even footing. Not impossible. There are a few out there that I think would give it a run for its money, but I think it's a tougher spend or a tougher job than people think when they start looking at everything that this thing can do versus finding every function that it can do in a desktop stack. So can you parallel one or two things? Can I get as good sound quality as I can in the desktop? Yeah, I can. And I can probably do it a little cheaper, but then I have to have another source, and there's some things like that that I'm not including in that spend. So it's not really a fair comparison.
Highlight.
I lost your voice again, Brian. I can't hear you.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yep. You're back again.
Okay. I just, was there anything technical wise you wanted to cover from the PDF presentation that maybe didn't make it in the review, or you wanted to highlight?
No, I think we've hit the high points on it. I think that the DAC architecture is a huge component of what went into this. And I think that's the big reason for going from the SP2000 to the SP3000. I think the end result of having a better signal to noise ratio and a better presentation of the music was exactly the intended target. I think it's admirable that they, improved battery life in the process. We're closer to the original 1,000 battery life of 10 hours now than we were to the 2,000, which dropped it considerably. They did a lot of things right. There's still one or two things here and there that I'd love to see them address at some point. I'm not a huge fan of the advanced EQ. I'd like to see it go to a truly parametric, and there's still some bugs to be worked out there. But I think, like I said, for what they've done with it, I think they made a lot of moves in a very positive direction. And I think, like I said, it really is their dog and pony show. Every bit of technology, every bit of capability that Astell&Kern had is somewhere in this model. You're muted again. You're on mute, Brian.
What's going on? Can you hear me
so
now?
Yep. So you're on mute again. I could actually see it in the corner there that time where it popped up the little mic block. So
My mute button like automatically. I don't know what's happening. But oh yeah, at the 130, muting my 130 dB signal to noise ratio. Is that the highest we've ever receivable DAP?
We've seen a few higher in desktop units. To my knowledge, that's as good as it's gotten in a DAP at this point. So, and even when I say we've seen a few higher, we've seen a couple that were 131, 132. It's not, markedly higher. This is competitive with just about everything.
Right. And I'm not 100% sure. Are you hearing the signal ratio difference, the improvement in the DAC? But you're hearing something that's a lot better than even their previous SP3000.
I think what happens is anytime you lower the noise floor like that when you look at SNR, what you're really doing is talking about lowering the noise floor. None of us are going to listen at 130 dB for very long, so we're not going to have any hearing left. But when you think about the fact that that's telling you that's the distance between the level of noise in the background and the signal that you're trying to listen to. If we have 70 dB between the signal and noise, it's a very clear signal. We can hear pretty much everything, and that's a good benchmark. Most people prefer something 80 to 85 dB, and that should be that it's basically completely silent when you're not intentionally playing something. And anything over 85 dB in a normal listening situation, you're not hearing the improvement in SNR itself, and that the background is already black. If you're at 85 dB, you're not hearing anything at that low end that shouldn't be there. But the nice thing of what it does for us is it exposes more detail and things in the middle ground where it's cleaner, it's clearer, we get more out of it, despite the fact that, like I said, none of us who have any brains in our head are going to crank it to 130 to see if we can find the noise floor.
Right.
What hearing we have left, most of us want to keep. So it's not so much the absolute as it is what it does for everything in between that's going to make the difference for people.
Okay, and maybe pull up the photo of it again. Let's see if that pops up.
Here we go.
Yeah, I just wanted to take this opportunity to kind of get William's extra thoughts on this top of the line, unbelievable engineered DAP. If you want the ultimate in sound quality from a portable listening experience, your Android phone won't give it to you, your iPhone won't give it to you, but the Astell&Kern P3000 seems like it can do that. William, did you have any other thoughts on? Just wanted to make this I would say, which is very detailed. Yeah.
I would say, read the review. I think there's a lot of good information in it, and it'll give you a pretty good feel for what they've changed, what's improved, what's different. I would also encourage you, if you're going to be anywhere near CanJam or one of the events that's coming up and you get a chance to pick up this unit and to listen to it, take the time to do it. It really is a remarkable little unit when you think about how much effort went into creating something the size of a smartphone. And I think even if you're not in the market for something like this, to pick one up and listen to it for 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever you can do, gives you an idea of what's possible. You know, so when we do reviews, I think it's always important to look at it from the framework of, okay, what's realistically possible? And right now, this is the DAP that sets the bar for what's possible.
Okay, well, I think that's a great way to end it. Thank you, William Jennings, senior headphone editor for ecoustics.com. I'm Brian Mitchell, founder of ecoustics.com, and hopefully we will see you next time on YouTube Live.